Okay, so hopefully now we should be good to go. I'm watching the screen. Okay, we are good to go, and it sounds like everybody can hear us now. Sorry about that. And we're ready to move on to the next agenda item if you guys are.
Okay, so we are BIB, back in business. Okay.
We are.
Okay. Unless there's anything else for Chief, let's go to community improvement grants, and that's Mr. Campbell and Mr. Fleischman. So whichever of you gentlemen wants to introduce that that topic tonight, we'll go ahead on. Ah, there
Here I am. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Let me get my all the right windows open and pages in the right place. So you may recall that back in late November or early December, the council decided to postpone any consideration of the applications for community improvement grants that were received at the end of November due to the uncertainty of the city's financial situation. Now that you've received the briefing from the finance department and city management at your last meeting, we put this back on the agenda to see whether you want to scrap the program for this year or would like us to continue to go forward with it. As a matter of background, we received only 2 applications this year. The total amount requested from both of them was $7,900. One thing that I failed to mention in the written staff report is that one of the grant applications will be essentially using the city's grant as match for other funding sources and will result in an additional $10,000 being in their program budget from one an anonymous source and the other from a local business. I guess the options before you this evening are to suspend the community improvement grant program for this fiscal year or to direct staff to go ahead and score the 2 applications, which we did not do when they were submitted at the end of November. They've just been sitting on hold. With that, I'll answer any questions you may have. And so I'll answer any questions you may have. I guess there is no and.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Question for Dan.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Councilor Hook.
Councilor Hook here, and I am just kind of curious what the general type of improvement these 2 applications were for. Not necessarily the exact neighborhood or group, but what kinds of things they were asking for in these applications.
Both applications are for what I would consider to be the permanent installation of improvements in the downtown area. One application came from Revitalize Downtown Staten. The other one came from a group of downtown property owners, business owners.
Okay. All right. Other thoughts on that?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead again, please.
Yeah, so I just have a couple of thoughts on it. I think our businesses have been struggling quite a bit this last year. I think that it seems like it would, with how much of the total amount they're asking for, it would be worth at least looking over them and having them scored seeing kind of what the needs are, because I am curious, and I think that if we can find a way to support our businesses while still being fiscally responsible and not spending the entire budget of the community grant program, it might be worth at least entertaining. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts.
Dan, quick question here. That those grants would need to be spent by the end of the fiscal year?
That is correct.
End of June. Okay. All right. I don't know. Yeah. Someone else.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Councilor Ort, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Dan, I feel like I recall, did we stop the process of accepting applications? Did we put a hold on that? Or was the whole time allotted for applications to be due and then we kind of put a hold on it? Can you remind me?
The latter. The hold was put on after the deadline for submission. There never was an announcement that we're not going to accept any additional applications. So
Okay, so everyone had the same.
Come the deadline of the end of November, there were only these 2 applications that had come in.
Okay.
All right. Other questions? Any thoughts? Has everyone looked at the options on this? Suspend the grant for the fiscal year? To score the 2 applications or reopen the application period? What to do?
Mayor.
Councilor McDonald.
I think nobody's got anything else. I'm going to go ahead and make the motion to direct staff to score the applications received, and we will consider.
And come back on March 15th, right?
Yep.
A
Okay.
second.
Okay, a motion and a second to direct staff to score the 2 applications received and report back on the 15th for consideration. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts on this?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate Councilor Ord's question because it did give a little bit more of an understanding that, you know, everyone did have an equal opportunity to submit for that. And so I think that this is a good motion that Councilor McDonald put forward, and I intend to vote yes on this.
Okay. All right. Well, in the March 15th meeting, that's my favorite meeting of the year because, yeah, it's birthday time and time to talk about Julius Caesar for me. So great meeting coming up. Any other questions? If not, Alyssa, would you poll the council on this one, please?
Sure. Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Counselor McDonald?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
And Counselor Hook?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 4-0.
0. Okay, so that will come back to us.
All right, thank you. We will be back to you in 2 weeks.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. What's the next thing? The marijuana one. Let's see. Location of marijuana retail operations. Chief and Mr. Fleischman, do you want to start? Who wants
That will be me again.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay. So you may recall that several meetings ago during the public comment period, you received a request to look at the issue of the city's regulations of marijuana retail stores. As a matter of background, marijuana establishments are licensed by the state. Retail establishments are licensed by the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. Medical dispensaries are licensed by the Oregon Health Authority. Those that are licensed as both are obviously licensed by both state agencies. Among the state rules for where a marijuana establishment, either medical dispensary or retail establishment may be located, is a requirement that they be at least 1,000 feet from a school. There is also a requirement that dispensaries, medical dispensaries, be separated by at least 1,000 feet from each other. But there is not that requirement for retail establishments in the state's rules. I'm going to attempt to share my screen so that everyone watching can see the maps that were included in your packet. Is that working?
Yeah,
Okay, good. Oop, wrong screen. There we go.
good.
So this map here shows in the pink line is 1,000-foot radius from the properties of the 5 schools in the city. And when the city's zoning is applied as to where any retail business may locate, the properties that are zoned for retail use and more than 1,000 feet from the school are shown in this map in green.
Now, Dan, time out for a second. We're talking about marijuana retail establishments
Well,
or just any retail?
any retail. So this shows the properties that are zoned for retail use. Whether it's a bookstore, a dress shop, or a marijuana shop. And that are more than 1,000 feet from a school.
Oh, okay.
So it's the downtown area, the Sylvan Springs area up near the Dairy Queen and Arco Station, the Roth Bi-Mart area, and down near the southwest corner near the fire station.
Okay.
So when you combine, so that's the state rules.
Mm-hmm.
In 2015, when the city passed its own marijuana business licensing code, it required that any retail establishment, marijuana retail establishment, be at least 1,000 feet from any other. So
Okay.
You combine that with our zoning and the 1,000 foot, and in theory, we could have no more than 4 marijuana retail establishments in the city, 1 in each of these 4 areas with the shaded properties. And I apologize for the different size of these graphics in your packet. I didn't know that that was going to happen. So there are currently 3 marijuana retail establishments that have been licensed by the city, and really 2 of them just in about the past month were finally able to open their business. So there is 1 downtown on North 3rd Ave. There is 1 up on Martin Drive near the Arco and Dairy Queen. And there is 1, it's actually got a Wilco Road address, but you access it from North Peach Ave behind the 7-Eleven. And so this map shows that when you draw the 1,000-foot radius around each of those existing locations, there is no other area that is zoned for retail use within 1,000 feet of those properties. And so again, there could, in theory, be 1 additional store in the city. The 3rd map that I provided in your packet just made an assumption that if the council was interested in reducing it, here's what it would look like if you were to reduce the separation distance to 500 feet. It would open up potential locations on North First Ave and some additional potential locations in the southwest corner of the city near the fire station.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, go ahead, Counselor.
Councilor Ort. Dan, can you, so none of us were on the council in 2015. Do you recall what the idea was behind the 1,000-foot radius of the stores? What was the thinking?
I don't recall that there was much discussion at the council. It was part of the proposed rules that was presented to the council by the police chief at that time. I think that it was relatively early in the state's experience with legalizing marijuana. The rules were adopted before the state rules went into effect, so there were no marijuana stores yet. And I think there was just substantial concern about what the impact of retail marijuana would be on the community. And that being said, one of the ways that communities have dealt with issues like that, whether it's marijuana, whether it's adult businesses, is to either say, we're only going to allow them in a very small, certain concentrated area, or we're going to require they be dispersed so that we don't get a, shall we say, whiskey row in one part of town. And so I think, and also I think it was based partly on the state's rules that medical dispensaries be 1,000 feet from each other.
Okay.
For which the Oregon Health Authority had put in place a couple of years before, but the OLCC did not include in the rules for retail.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I think I can follow up on this further. I think one of the other things to keep in mind, and we put it in the staff report too, was the marijuana had overwhelmingly failed, in terms of the voting that had occurred. The issue of why marijuana was allowed was because we had the establishment that had already put an OLCC license request in prior to the guidelines being in place. And based off of the recommendation of legal counsel, at that point, we had no way of stopping that business from opening, even if the council decided not to approve marijuana dispensaries. So reluctantly, and I remember it was Councilor Lewis who made the motion and talked about this, instead of creating a monopoly type situation, what they wanted to do was to basically do a time, manner, place restrictions. The public comment you got is from the owner of the Sylvan Springs, and he talks about the 1,000-foot regulation is pretty standard throughout the state of Oregon. And one of the reasons that the staff report does recommend not changing the current code. But that's a little more history on what happened. If the one had not been grandfathered in, I do believe the council would not have voted to allow retail marijuana in the city. And that's what led to that passage, and that's what led to the time, manner, place restrictions that you see. And then the 3 that are now subsequently open in the city at the 3 of those designated locations. So that's a little more history on the 2015 and what had happened. And we have the voting totals from the state referendum at the time that talks about what Staten's vote was on that passage.
Right. So, right. That the voting totals are in the staff report. Staff has been in touch with the proprietors of the 3 shops. You've got written communication from one of them that I assume came in this afternoon. And basically the recommendation from staff is to not change the rules for a variety of reasons. And one of them is that while we have the 3 shops, really only one of them has been operating for more than a month. So it may be wise to give it some time to shake out to see what it's like to have 3 of them in the city. Secondly, is that those 3 locations were set up with the understanding that there wouldn't be a shop within 1,000 feet. It was about a 3-2 vote in Stayton, opposed to legalization, as Keith said. There is still the opportunity for 1 additional shop that just might not be in the location where the individual who came to you a couple meetings ago had in mind. So the recommendation from staff is to not change the code. But we will follow your direction. So if you've got other questions, we'll try to answer them.
Well, there's another thing here. For those of us that are inclined to let anything happen because someone wants it, we should all ask ourselves and ponder carefully, what do we want this community to look like? This place that we live. If it's a wide open, anything goes place, then I guess we get to make that decision too. But if it's not, then we need to hold the line somewhere. Okay, statement. Someone else. Yes, go ahead, Councilor Hook.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I think the first one is maybe for the police chief. With the one that has been operating, and not necessarily just about that business, but just with marijuana being available, have we had a lot of issues with that? And I'm just asking because I want information. I'm trying to look at this from a lot of different points of view.
So on that question, no, we have not had calls for service for that location.
I have a follow-up question, please, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, please.
Do you have any data that that shows maybe any increase in calls for service just in the community regarding marijuana use, or I don't know, like DUIs or is there anything significant that you've seen in a pattern since we've had the legalization happen? Are there any trends that you're seeing with calls?
The one area I would say is DUI. What we're seeing is an increase in non-alcohol DUIs, where we're having to do urinalysis testing or blood testing for drugs or other things. I wouldn't put my finger all towards marijuana, but we're seeing a lot more of those. So it tends, I don't have the exact numbers, but I have seen just with the basic reports coming out from officers where our DUIs have changed. We're seeing more of that. I know statewide, not just locally, I know one of the big concerns for law enforcement was the accessibility for kids and the youth in schools, but with COVID, we've been, not in school, so that's where a lot of those calls would be normally generated. So I would say we have had an increase, and that increase is in the DUI area.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Other thoughts, questions on this one?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, jump in there.
I'm not sure if you can actually hear me. I've been trying to speak a couple different times. Okay, great. Yeah, so I just had a quick question for Dan. What was the location that the marijuana retailer wanted to put a shop that he wouldn't be able to because of this 1,000-foot restriction?
My understanding is he was looking at the building at the corner of North First and High. That was the former Edward Jones financial services office.
Gotcha. And if I'm reading this map correctly, there are other options available for him should he choose to want to open a marijuana retail shop in our town, correct?
There would be one other potential location for a marijuana retail store after the 3 that are in place.
Okay. And so this just means an individual counselor. I'm not hearing a demand that really merits that these new restrictions be diminished to 500 feet. So that's just me as a personal counselor hearing this. that maybe that these changes aren't necessary at this time. So whenever the time comes to make a motion, I'm ready.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I just have a question for Dan out of curiosity. Do we have, as a city, any ordinances that that only allow liquor stores in certain areas?
We do not regulate liquor stores any differently than any other retail operation.
Except for marijuana.
But I would like,
Except for marijuana is the only, it looks like Chief has something to add to it.
so when we're talking about liquor stores, OLCC regulates that. So we may regulate the location, but they regional. That's why you don't see 4 or 5 liquor stores in the same community. They actually do regulate that. So those are some of the things.
So they are
different.
more regulated by OLCC in terms of how many can be in a certain area. So we don't necessarily have them because we don't need them.
I don't know if I would say it that way. I would just say OLCC
I'm not need
regulates
them, but they already regulate the time, place, and
OLCC deems how many can go into a community based on the size of the community.
okay, but they
Or
do
the
not
market
do
area.
that. But they do not do that with marijuana dispensaries. Retail.
Correct.
Right.
Thank you.
So as Mr. Brock pointed out in his letter to you, the OLCC was concerned about how many licenses there were statewide and had for quite a while a moratorium on issuing any of them. That's why Mr. Brock's store sat empty for at least 6 or 9 months because he could not get his license processed by OLCC.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions or thoughts, or would you like to move toward a decision here?
Well, Mr. Mayor, it doesn't look like if we don't want to change anything, we don't need to take any action.
Right, that's no motion necessary. I find a staff recommendation that I absolutely agree with. That's just me. The whole thing, everything they said. I like it.
Mr. Mayor,
Great job, guys. I'm going to
Mr.
go to Councilor Hood. And thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Go ahead, Councilor.
thank you. Councilor Hook here. I agree with the not taking any action this evening. I hope that this is sort of maybe a pause, and I know that I would like to maybe just look a little bit more into what's going on in the state, and I think that this is a good conversation for us to have because our job is to look at how we do business in the city, and I am a little reluctant to be regulating a small business, a group that doesn't necessarily need to be regulated. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But I think this is a good conversation that we're having right now, and I do support taking no action today. But I think that this is something that will probably come up again to us, and so it may be in our best interest to kind of be keeping our ear to the ground and seeing what other communities are doing, what other states are doing, what kind of lawsuits are happening around the country. Because if a city is regulating more than what OLCC is requiring, and I just can see maybe some things coming up, and I'd like to know more information. So I'm sort of rambling, but also I just think that it's important to let the community members know that this probably is going to come back. Maybe not with this person, but it's a pretty booming business right now.
And the state needs more revenue, and there's a chance. Okay, how many of you support a take no action? Do we need a formal vote on this, or a show of hands, or what would you like to do?
Yeah, I would support a take no action also.
2, 3.
I'll say the councilors.
Okay. let's see, do we need a formal motion? I don't know.
It said no.
I don't think.
Mr. Mayor, I've been told that it's not a requirement.
Okay,
If there is no motion, there is no action.
okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Chief? Chief,
And Chief.
question, Bill. Is marijuana still classified as a Class A narcotic by the feds?
I know it's still classified. I don't know if they've changed the classification of, but yeah, the federal government still deems it as a controlled substance.
Okay, I thought you'd know, boom, like that on that
Well,
one.
the level, they do change that off and on, and with everything changing throughout the country and stuff, I don't know if they've taken steps yet to move forward on any change with that. So,
Okay, thank you, Chief.
you bet.
What'd be next? Let's see, where'd my agenda go? There you are. Communications from staff. Is there anything this evening? Any of the staff have anything to say? Keith?
We're playing
Campbell,
musical.
Mr. Campbell.
We're playing musical chairs here. Normally I like to sketch out what I'm going to say. I'm not going to do that, and we'll see if Lance Ludwig, the Public Works Director, wants to hop on. This Friday, Tom Etzel, our Public Works Supervisor, is retiring after 30-plus years with the city, and we're going to do something formally on our Facebook page as that comes to happen. But I think I just really want to take a moment to call out Tom's service to the community. And I'll share a little story. It's Tuesday, September 8th at 4 a.m. in the morning, and wildfires are 5 miles outside. And I'm sitting in my office talking on the phone with the chief, and we're trying to get a situational report. And in my office walks Tom Etzel. And he's pretty emotional because he's just tried to help his family deal with the fires coming near him, but he's there, and his thing is, what can I do to help? And I tell that story because I don't think I can epitomize the kind of person, the kind of employee Tom Etzel is. And I could sit here for hours and talk about all the great things and all the great stories. I can reach out to Tom. I get an immediate response. I know everything is going to be taken care of and handled. And I can say all those wonderful things, but he's even a better human being than he is an employee. And I am really going to, and I know I'm not alone in this in the city, I'm just the representative who gets to speak this, really miss Tom's personality and his service and dedication. So kind of off the cuff, I wanted to publicly say that, and we'll do a formal recognition. Because of COVID restrictions, we are not going to be able to do the send-off, we hope, but we are. Tom has agreed this summer to come back when we can get everyone together safely and to do a proper send-off. But I wanted to publicly in this meeting acknowledge Tom and his service to the community and the service to us, and just the person and the human being. And just, I can't speak more highly of a person than of him. And I guess I could say this too. There are people in Sublimity, Tom's been with us for a long time, who are still mad because Tom got to start over there, and still mad that Staten took him almost 30 years ago. So if you know Tom, is to like him and to respect him. And so I just wanted to do a quick off the cuff wishing him the absolute best in retirement, and hope we can keep him around on call for just those certain things, because I've joked with Tom, not only does he know where the bodies are buried, he actually buried a lot of them for us. So he is an asset and will be missed, and I hope he's still very active in the community. And that's all I had tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Keith, and thank you, Tom. And any others that would like to acknowledge Tom real quick, and we'll go on to
Mr. Mayor, this is Lance. Alyssa stopped my video, so I won't come on, and that's fine as well. I just want to reemphasize what Keith had already said. 32 years with the same team, that's pretty tough anymore when you really start thinking about free agency and cities looking for good qualified individuals. And Tom chose to stay with our city, and it's been a big benefit to us. Not only does he know the wastewater treatment plant, he knows the water treatment plant, he knows the infrastructure in the street, he knows when it was built, where it's at. I mean, he's just a resource that you can never replace. So It's been my great privilege to work with him for the last 6 years, and I'm going to miss him as a person as much as anything. So with that, I'll say good evening. Thank you.
Good evening. Okay, Lance. You'll be back one of these days in person, right? I hope. Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The council chair, I just wanted to acknowledge just what kind and wonderful words two of Tom's coworkers have just said about him and his dedication to the city. And I do not know him personally, but I think that we've heard plenty about the great work that he does over the last couple of years that I've been on the council. And I just want to thank him for all that he's done. And I hope he gets lots of relaxing in retirement. So thank you very much for all you do, Tom.
Mm-hmm. All right, good. Thank you. Any others? We all appreciate what you've done, Tom. Yeah, I always wondered why we would have a sort of contentious relationship with Sublimity in some things. And it's good to find out that it was Tom who chose to work here instead of up there. So good to finally settle these things. I've got a reappointment tonight for your consideration, and if you'd go with that with me. There's a word I want with that, and I can't think of it right now. Luke Cranston, those of you, all of you, I think have seen Luke at work on budget committees last couple of years at least, and he's been an active member and good insight, good questions, and he asked to be reappointed, and I'm happy to offer that. And if you folks are okay with that, I'd like to go ahead and do that. So that's what I've got for this evening.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the reappointment of Luke Cranston to the Budget Committee.
Okay, thank
Seconded.
you. And a second. Thank you, Ben. Alyssa, would you hold the group, please?
Sure. Counselor Hook,
Yes.
Counselor McDonald,
Yes.
Counselor Ort,
Yes.
and Counselor Patty.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 4-0.
Okay, thank you. All of you have probably seen this and maybe even participated as we did all day today, at least in this massive cleanup from that ice storm. It's really something to go out to that limb and leaf and trash pile that's out there behind the middle school and look at the amount of stuff that's piled up there. This mountain of material and then a mountain of it that's already been ground up. And of course the city with its initial offering of a place to dump the stuff, and then as I assume the hiring of that track hoe to pile it up, and whoever is grinding it up, is just an amazing effort. And wherever things need to be on that one, I'm going to offer them. It's really something. Yeah. So other thoughts tonight? I think I'm done, but you folks might have anything.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
This is Lance again.
Yeah.
I want to point out regarding the pile down there, that's kind of a collaborative effort. There was many of us involved. What the emphasis that I want to point out today is that I met with Republic Services out there last week, and they had traveled up and down the corridor to different cities, and by far we had the best operation they had seen. I just thought it was pretty nice to hear that, and I wanted to point that out.
Yeah. Oh, that is, it's amazing. If you haven't been out there, follow the pickups and trailer loads of stuff that go out there on Kendall every day. And it's just pretty impressive. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I want to just say because I feel like when things are going good, sometimes I don't always express my thanks as much as I probably should. But I'm always impressed by our city. I think that we are extremely lucky with the staff that we have and the way that things are run and the relationships that our city staff builds with other organizations. And I know that that's probably not an easy job to organize all of these things and be thinking ahead and getting something like that set up so quickly, and then to do it in a way where you're getting kudos like that from a waste management company. Like that's really cool. And thank you for the work that you guys have done and just all the city staff, because really we have a pretty amazing city for its size and a pretty great community that supports it. So.
Okay, thank you. Good. I got to observe in driving around and looking at all the damage that a lot of the maple trees and a lot of the oak trees and a lot of the birch trees didn't do well. A lot of the firs did pretty good. The evergreens seem to do better. We've got a couple of sequoias in our area, and they might have dropped a limb or two, but you know, of course, in their 2,000 or 3,000 year lifespan, that's okay. They can lose a limb once in a while. And I thought the oaks were the hardiest tree, and mine came partly apart. Big, beautiful heritage tree, and pieces of limb all over the place. I don't know what you folks observed, but that's just mine. Anyway, anything else this evening? Anything? You ready to go home? It's 8 o'clock. Let's do it then. Thank you and good night. Thank you, folks.
Thanks, everyone.